I've given up trying to advise anybody on who's tenable in the government. That's really a matter for the Prime Minister. All I'm going to say is that we are absolutely determined to get to the bottom of what went wrong and how we can help in the future. Because we've seen two issues here today. The first is, as you rightly identified there, an issue with intelligence. The Foreign Office's own principal risk report highlighted in July, on the 22nd of July, the risk of complete failure in Afghanistan. And now we're seeing, even now, people who didn't make it out in time. So there's a lesson to be learnt there. Now, there's an ongoing question as to how on earth do we help those who are entitled to our protection and our help now, who find themselves, through no fault of their own, cut off, isolated and alone in an extremely hostile country. And so we're pushing on all of that as well.
Yeah, obviously very pressing matter there. This principal risk report that you mentioned in your questioning, it doesn't appear to be in the public domain. How did you obtain it?
I've spoken to a lot of people in the last few weeks who are very keen that I should understand exactly what's been going on inside the Foreign Office and inside other elements of government. And I've been extremely careful, as you can imagine, in which bits of information I use and which bits I don't, in order to protect absolutely the security of our nation and those areas where we do need to be cautious. But I think in a warning like this, which clearly has now been well overtaken by events, revealing that it was made on the 22nd of July is a matter of public interest.
So are you saying this was a leaked report? Is it from a whistleblower?
It's a report given to me by somebody who was in a position to know.
OK, but it is now out there in the public domain that this report existed. It doesn't speak well, does it, to the systems of intelligence that are feeding into the Foreign Secretary. If he didn't seem to be aware of it, you are aware of it, and now the whole country knows about it.
Well, it's quite clear that there are two kinds of intelligence failures. There are those failures where the intelligence agency fails to provide the intelligence, and that's the traditional meaning of the word. And there's a second kind of intelligence failure where whoever is the principal didn't read it. I'm afraid you can't blame the spies if the officers don't read the report. OK, so further questions there for the Foreign Secretary.
He didn't seem to have much confidence about the numbers of people who are still there, who should have been evacuated. He's not in touch with some of the ambassadors in third countries whose borders could have been used to get people out. And he's admitted that the Afghan staff who were guarding the UK embassy didn't manage to get out either. Do you think that the Foreign Office, do you have any confidence in the Foreign Office or the Foreign Secretary specifically to get those people out?
Well, there's a lot of us, funnily enough, actually, there's a bunch of ex-military folks, officers and other ranks who are currently organising to help various individuals. Some of you may have heard that one of the interpreters who worked with me when I was still serving has got stuck. I'm very pleased to be able to report that others have got out, and we've had some very good cooperation with some amazingly dedicated Foreign Office personnel in the region and some extraordinarily courageous people around the world, and that has helped us to get people out. I should also say that we've been in pretty regular touch with various ministers, and we are able to get some cooperation and get ministers helping, and I'm very pleased to say that emphasis has been there. So I think that there's an awful lot that we can all do, and that's where we're focused.
He mentioned several times about the priority of getting people out, and there seemed to be this hierarchy of in which order they were going to attach the priority. He mentioned several times this phrase mono-nationals. Was that new to you? Is there a degree of Britishness which ascribes to you some kind of priority for getting out of Afghanistan? Is that something that you're comfortable with?
It was a surprise to me. I've only ever had one belief, which is either you have a British passport, in which case you're entitled to protection of the British state, or you don't, in which case you need to have justification for that protection. We've already established that those who are interpreters or maybe guards at the British Embassy or so on may be entitled to that protection despite not being British citizens. But if you are a British citizen, I don't think it matters what other passport you may or may not hold. We owe you a duty of care. You're one of us, and so we should absolutely be treating all British citizens of whatever other citizenships they may hold as one.
So will you be taking that up further then with the Foreign Office?
There are a series of follow-on questions that you're beginning to identify that many of us have picked up on during that session. There will be a series of follow-up letters, and we'll make those public in due course.
And I was just going to say, would you like to tell us what any of those other follow-up questions are now?
I've got to clear them with the rest of the committee first, so it wouldn't be polite of me to share them before I've done that.
Oh, first for breaking news here at Sky. Given that you've just said, you know, the spies can create this intelligence, but if the ministers don't read it, then there's not much we can do about that. Can we even be in a position to be talking about, you know, targeting terrorist cells, targeting ISIS, talking to the Taliban about getting people out of there, if we've got ministers who don't read the intelligence?
Well, I think it's a little bit too far to say that I'm saying that ministers don't read the intelligence. What I'm saying is that intelligence has to be assessed and read at each level up the chain. And now, whether or not it's then included in a major package or not, or whether it's seen separately, that's where the challenge comes. But I'm absolutely confident that for targeting authorities, I know because I used to be tangentially involved in it, that reading the intelligence is exactly what the Permanent Joint Headquarters and the Chief Joint Operations do. And just by the response that we saw from PGHQ and Admiral Key and his extraordinary team, we can see that the Ministry of Defence and particularly military commitment in it were absolutely all over this.
I know that you were on television this morning and warning against serious talks with the Taliban, who you described as a terror death cult, I think you said. How do we go about getting evacuees out without dealing with them?
Well, I'm afraid we are going to have to deal with them. That's true, because that's the reality of defeat. If you are defeated, you don't get to choose who your opposite number is. The victors do that, and in this case, it's the Taliban. We chose to deal with the Afghan government, but they don't exist anymore, so our choice doesn't matter. I'm afraid that's simply what defeat looks like. So we do have to deal with the Taliban, but I think we need to do it with open eyes. And I think that the Foreign Secretary shared my concern today. I think it was one of those moments where, although he didn't make the comment, it was perfectly obvious what he thought. The reality is that we're dealing with an organization that claims, through its amazingly slick PR operation, some of the images of which you're seeing at the moment, claims to have reformed, claims to now sort of respect the rights of individuals and so on in various different ways. But in reality is, even now, not just denying women and girls education or a place in work or further education, but is actually doing much more than that. It's actually hunting people down. I know of people in Lashkar and Kandahar who have been reported to me as having been murdered in recent days and weeks. And I'm told of friends in Kabul who are moving house to house at the moment in order to stay one step ahead of those who are chasing them.
You spoke very movingly in the House of Commons a short while ago. I'm just wondering, some time on from that, have your reflections changed in any way about what has been lost, and indeed if there is any chance, and you were indicating that there is still some chance that you could try and take something out of this situation, do you still hold that view?
Oh, look, I do. I'm incredibly positive for the United Kingdom in coming years and decades. The reality is that this feels like defeat because in Afghanistan it is a defeat, but it isn't necessarily a defeat for the UK or indeed for the West more widely. The reality is we are an incredibly powerful nation, and I don't just mean militarily, but powerful because of the culture, because of because of the freedoms that we enjoy, and the fact that you're grilling me like this today is part of that example, but the fact that I was able to grill a cabinet minister is another part of that example. You know, these liberties are what people choose. Just look at the migration flows in the world. People want to come to free countries. They want to start businesses where there's the rule of law. They want to grow their families and their enterprise in areas where they can have a relatively predictable future. So I'm hugely positive for the United Kingdom. But what we need to do is we need to remember that actually we have these strengths and we can use them. We need to believe in ourselves, and we need to partner with allies and others around the world to make sure that we actually deploy the force that we have. At the moment, we are allowing ourselves to be defeated. We're backing away from Afghanistan. We're hiding hiding away from China in different ways. You know, we are finding ourselves on the back foot when there is literally no need to be.
And from what we've learnt over the last week, the last few hours, would you say that we are at significantly greater risk of terror attack on UK soil?
Well, there is one thing that we have demonstrated time and again over the last 2 or 3 decades. Whenever an Islamist radical extremist group like the Taliban takes over a piece of territory, whether that piece of territory is in northern Nigeria or Mali or Libya, Syria, Iraq, I mean, I can keep going. What always follows is exactly the same. A terrorist group that seeks to export that violence, that radical form of terrorism, that extremist view, it always tries to export that violence. And we see, sadly, incidents across not just the UK, but around the world. Most of those incidents normally happen in the region, and many, many people, innocent people, are killed. But they also come as close as this. And in fact, from the window that I can see in front of me, there was an attack not very long ago where somebody inspired by the death cult of ISIS came and killed an incredibly brave police officer who was defending our parliament and our democracy.
I know that you have talked, and you just have done, about the need for collaborative foreign policy, the dangers of perhaps just hitching our wagon onto the United States. Did you think, from the evidence you heard from the Foreign Secretary, that that is a view that the government is coming to as well?
Well, to be fair, we didn't really get into that because that's the next stage of the questions. We were very much focused on what went wrong in Afghanistan and what we can do to help those in most need. But, you know, I'm going to be pushing, again, for our European NATO partners to take up more of the burden. Now, the United States have had a point on this, which is not all of our partners have always been pulling their own weight, and we need to make sure that we all do. But it's also important that the UK reaches out and makes sure that we do exactly what we should be, which is the network power, that enabling cog, if you like, between different sized countries. Because we have demonstrated over operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, and indeed right around the world, that we can partner with huge countries like the United States and much smaller countries like Estonia and get the best out of both. Now, we should be doing that not just for European countries or North Atlantic countries, but also for countries in Africa and indeed in Asia who wish to work with us and who wish really to have the option to turn their people towards the freedom and democracy that we enjoy, but are currently feeling the pressure of autocracy and tyranny, either from countries like Beijing or Russia, or indeed from the Islamist theology that we are seeing emerging again in Afghanistan.